Kennedy and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. President Trump unleashing on Democrats in his fiercest support yet of his Supreme Court nominee, Brett Kavanaugh.
I can tell you that false accusations of all types are made against a lot of people. This is a high-quality person, and I certainly hope it would be a horrible insult to our country if this doesn't happen. And it'll be a horrible, horrible thing for future political people, judges, anything you want. It'll be a horrible thing. It cannot be allowed to happen. And the Democrats are playing a con game, C-O-N, a con game.
Is there anything?
And they know it's a con game. The second accuser has nothing. The second accuser doesn't even know. She thinks maybe it could have been him, maybe not. She admits that she was drunk. She admits time lapses. He's startled. He can't believe this is happening. His wife is devastated. His children are devastated. I don't mean they're like, oh, gee, I'm a little unhappy. They're devastated.
Meanwhile, Senate Democrats are continuing to prove that the facts don't matter with a new wave of smears against Kavanaugh.
The second thing about that interview was when he said that he actually downplayed his drinking, and he said he never really blacked out, so he didn't remember things. I mean, those are things that really go to credibility, given some of the stories circulating out there.
I've heard from both sides, and I believe Dr. Blasey Ford and I believe Ms. Ramirez. Both of their stories are credible, unlike his, where he wouldn't actually answer the question or say why he wouldn't be interviewed by the FBI. That's not the response of someone who wants to plead his innocence.
It is Judge Kavanaugh who is seeking a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court and who I think now bears the burden of disproving these allegations rather than Dr. Ford and Ms. Ramirez, who should be dismissed with slanderous accusations.
All right, Greg, I'm going to start with you. I think you're a good place to start. All right, look, they are throwing out the fundamental principles of the criminal justice system, and that is the right of confrontation, the right of cross-examination. These are United States senators. They've already made up their mind. They've heard from her, they've heard from him. So what's the point of having courtrooms and trials in this country? Shouldn't we just decide if we like someone ahead of time?
Yeah, you know what's interesting is that they're being honest about it now. Both Coons and Mazie Hirono, both have formulated a fairly chilling response when you ask about due process. They'll go, this isn't a court of law. You don't need a due process. And it's like, you know what? They're right. They're basically admitting that we can crucify you without evidence or any kind of corroboration because it's not. Let's keep it out of the court of law and so you lose. What you learn now is you lose your rights if you're up for a job. So that my solution is everybody needs to get accusation insurance because right now, no, it's true because right now what they're saying is
it's called GoFundMe.
Yeah, GoFundMe. Okay. No, you're going to need allegation insurance. And the thing is, one last point, Judge, because I know you want to move on. We, as human beings, we mimic behavior. If you look at fashion, if you look at diet, you look at social media, we copy each other. This kind of behavior will spread. The exception of simply an allegation minus evidence is going to spread into other areas of our culture. It's already happening. You see it in the workplace. You see it in other places. How do we stop it?
Okay, Kennedy, how do we stop it? But I'm not going to finish there. Look, what we've got, United States senators saying that he needs to disprove a negative. How do you disprove or prove a negative? He's got to disprove that he did this. If he wasn't there and he didn't do it, number one, how does he prove that? And number two, how can United States senators shift the burden of proof? It's always on the complainant.
Well, it's actually really smart what her legal team is doing because they're coming up with a series of demands that are almost unmeetable. And so essentially when Republicans on the Senate Judiciary Committee say, well, we can't meet those because they don't meet the standard for, the protocol in the Senate. But also, I mean, that's how our criminal justice system, that's what it's based upon, which essentially follows from natural law. So you're turning all of that on its head, and you can't disprove a negative.
Natural law? common law. Absolutely. And she's right. Kennedy is right, Jesse. But they're saying that she's not getting fair and respectful treatments. What say you about that?
I think the Democrats have been unfair and disrespectful throughout this whole process. To Kavanaugh with the smears and the sandbagging. Listen, everything they've done has been political. The timing, the demands, the entourage surrounding this person. So you know what the Republicans said? They said, okay, let's take politics out of it. We're not going to question her. We're going to appoint a independent sex crimes prosecutor, female, who knows what she's talking about, and she will be the ones to ask the questions, not the politicians. And then the Democrats turn around and scream and said, this is unfair, this is going to create a circus. They've been the ones creating the circus here, and this type of person has been used before in Watergate, in Iran-Contra, as well as mafia hearings. So there's nothing new to this.
An outside attorney
bringing in an outside attorney
by the committee.
There's nothing new to this, and the Democrats are just complaining because I don't believe that Ford will look good being questioned by a female experienced litigator with the story that she has. I think her story will not hold up well, and that's the reason the Democrats are upset about this.
All right. Now,
I haven't heard a word here that indicates, because the judge started up by saying Democrats are smearing Judge Kavanaugh. I haven't heard a word of smear, but here's
They
what
said
I
he's guilty.
No,
he's guilty.
Innocent.
That is a smear.
Hold on. That's not a smear.
But he's guilty without
He's an
evidence.
attempted rapist.
I tell you what,
That's a smear.
let me talk for a second and then you can respond.
Go ahead.
Go.
But clearly this is not a court. This is a Senate
It's Congress.
confirmation hearing. And you have an opportunity here for the judge to testify, to say whatever he wants.
Right.
Nobody has heard from Ms. Ford yet.
It's also not a
a
court.
word.
How convenient.
The second thing,
Juan, let me tell
no.
you
The
something.
second
Are
thing to
these
say,
people
hang on,
under oath?
Kennedy. The second thing to say here is they are bringing in a woman lawyer because they've got 11 men on the Republican side,
Yeah, and they vote.
are embarrassed.
So they can't win.
aren't
If they bring in a man, they can't win. A woman, they can't win.
They can win, but what they've got to do is they've got to give her a fair opportunity.
Okay,
So
but
what
you know what? I
her
think-
lawyers have said is, hey, wait a second, we're not coming in here to be beaten up by somebody who's a criminal defense or a criminal investigator.
Prosecutor.
You refuse to even have the FBI investigate.
No, well,
you
let me ask you
refuse
this,
to have
Juan.
They
Mark
want
Let me
Judge.
ask you
beaten
this.
up
The-
by
the-
white
one
male
answer very
senators,
simple.
not by an experienced
Well,
prosecutor.
they're the senators. Why shouldn't they do the
Because
questioning? But the
they
big
balked
thing
at
here
it,
is
Juan.
they refuse to have Mark Judge, this guy who's now hiding out, who says that he was involved with drinking
Because once you let one witness come in, they're going to line up 7 or 8 or 9.
Well,
different
wait a
witnesses.
second. A minute
and
ago
then you're
you
going to
said,
draw it out
but
until
Jesse,
November.
Jesse, you said a minute ago, why are they rushing this? What's going on?
Wait a second. The only reason why it's being rushed is because Feinstein delayed it for a whole month and a half.
No.
Oh, you guys delayed it for 36
In other
years.
words, Jesse, and I can't believe this. In other words, you would say ignore the woman, especially
Ignore
after
the
she
woman.
takes the risk
She's
of
been
coming
asked to
forward.
testify
risk?
for a week
Okay.
and a half.
You want
All
it
right.
both ways. Here's the
Okay.
problem.
Okay.
The optics of the Anita Hill questioning were so bad and so
that's right.
offensive, and we cannot have a repetition of that in this day and age. Culture has changed, the Senate has changed, society has changed, and we're also in the middle of a movement, and we don't know how that ends. We don't know how that permanently changes society. But if you have a problem with people like Joe Biden and Arlen Specter going after a female witness or a female accuser or someone who's sworn under oath to testify before this committee, then why not try it differently? Why not have someone who's not showboating? Because when senators have their chance, like Cory Booker, this is my Spartacus moment, that's when it turns into a circus. And that's when people tune out. And that's when we don't learn the truth because everyone is auditioning.
This is not about a cross-examination. This
Why
is an
not?
opportunity.
How else do we test the truth in this country?
Because you give both people a chance
and then
to
how do
speak.
you decide? How do you decide?
Whether or not it's a credible allegation and whether or not you believe it.
Whether it's a civil case or a criminal case,
This is
there is a
not
time.
either.
This is even more significant.
Yes,
and I'll
but
tell
it's
you
not
why.
what you said.
Because this country is going to be under the rule of a Supreme Court with a man on it like this. And that's why we need to have a test.
Wait a second. So
of
you're
truth.
saying
No,
you just
I'm
want,
saying that
you just
his
want a
role
hard
on
right. You want a hard right Supreme
what
Court.
I want is the test of credibility
Well, then
that
fine.
we
I
used
just
from
one-
time immemorial.
before we go.
All right, you're not going to want to miss the 5 tomorrow because
God help me. Let me,
Right, Greg,
Judge, we're missing one big key here. He said there was no smear. We had a guy who just crawled under a rock, Avenatti, after calling Kavanaugh an attempted rapist or attempted gang raper, and then he crawled under his rock. He made Twitter private. So I want to remind how this is working to the public, how this works. Instead of driving deep on a specific case, what you do is you find a number of specific examples that alone are not sturdy. 1, Ford. 2, Ramirez. 3, Yearbook. 4, Avenatti. Avenatti's claim. So Avenatti's claim is alone. What does it mean? The yearbook thing, it's just a yearbook. What does that mean? The other cases have no corroboration, no witness. So individually, they don't match. They're not strong. So what you do is you create an environment of guilt by using these little things. That's what the Democrats are doing. It seems to be working with the help of the media.
It is working because the more complainants you bring in, the fewer that have to be tested by the rules of credibility that we have used from time immemorial.
So these women are all idiots in your opinion.
I'm not saying
the yearbook is.
No, Juan.
A yearbook isn't even human.
Wait a minute. I'm not going to let you get away with that, Juan.
They're not credited for willing to stand up and put themselves
under public examination. Do you think they're going to show up? And if they don't show up, what does that tell you?
Well, I would think that they are.
What does that tell you?
I would hope they would show up. Why would you think they don't?
What if they don't?
I don't know. Why do you say that? Because you wish they wouldn't.
No, that's not true.
Do you think Avenatti's going to show up on TV tonight?
I don't know.
Do you think he's going to show up?
I don't know.
I don't think he is.
But I don't think that says anything about Blasey Ford.
All right, now they want me to tease again.
Why wouldn't you let her testify?
You're not going to want to mystify tomorrow because President Trump is holding a press conference at 5 p.m. Eastern. Stop it. We will be bringing it to you live. Up next, Rush Limbaugh has a dire warning for Republicans ahead of the midterms.
Chaos.
President Trump trying to rally his base, tweeting out a reminder the midterms are right around the corner. And Rush Limbaugh taking it a step further, he's issuing a stark warning about the elections if Brett Kavanaugh is not confirmed to the Supreme Court.
If the Republicans do not get this vote taken and have Kavanaugh confirmed, you can kiss the midterms goodbye. You can kiss goodbye holding the House, and you can kiss goodbye holding the Senate. Because whatever the Democrats think of their base, the one thing I know is that if you guys fold on this and cave and keep bending over backwards, you've done that enough.
This comes as the GOP's favorability hits the highest mark it's seen in 7 years. A new Gallup poll finding 45% of Americans have a positive view of the party. Jesse, let me begin with you on Rush Limbaugh. What do you think? So is he saying that if the Republicans don't force Kavanaugh onto the court, that the Republican base will be disappointed and stay away from the voting booths in the midterms?
Yes, Rush is right. R-I-G-H-T. Right, Juan. Listen, they control everything right now in Washington, D.C. The White House, the House, the Senate, everything. If they can't get Kavanaugh through, they're toast. And here's why. They need to be more Machiavellian like the Democrats. Remember when Obama was in charge? You had FISA abuse, dirty dossiers, IRS targeting, street violence. You remember how Harry Reid accused Romney of not paying any taxes? They said Romney killed a cancer patient. They're very, very rough and tumble. And right now, the Republicans are teetering because they haven't funded the wall and they've only partially repealed Obamacare. And the reason why the favorability is up to its highest level in 3 years right now is because they have hung tough on certain things, like judges, like safety and security, and like middle-class wages. And Donald Trump is leading that charge for the party. He'll not cave to political correctness, and he won't back down when Democrats get hysteria and start making unsubstantiated allegations. So if the Republican Party loses its grip on power, it will be because they caved on this nominee.
So, Judge, you hear from Jesse that says just get it done. Republicans must win. But what about the process?
Well, you want to talk about the process? Well, let's bring in a prosecutor to cross-examine cross-examine the complainant. Look, here's the problem. For the last few years, Americans have been frustrated with the Clinton Foundation, with the Attorney General, with the email investigation, with declassification, and now they want Republicans, for once and for all, to put on their big boy pants and get it done. And I agree with Rush. If they don't step up, the Republicans are going to totally lose their support. And by the way, the numbers are the highest they've been in 7 years of GOP support. I mean, everyone is anticipating and anxiously awaiting a success, and it's got to happen. Look, Mitch McConnell can take this vote to the floor. He doesn't even have to do this in the committee. He can do it on Friday if he wants to. And I have a feeling she's not going to show up, and they can vote on Friday.
Kennedy?
I actually agree with Judge Jeanine and Rush on this. I don't think she's going to show up, and that's what I said at the top of the show. Was her lawyers have created enough wiggle room for Dr. Ford that I really don't think there's a lot of upside for her. And I think there's enough doubt on the Republican side. Why is there Republican optimism right now? It's all about the economy. It's all about the economy and families believing that they've got more at stake, invested in their future, and more economic mobility. And that means more opportunity for them and their children. Is that reality? Not quite yet. Some of this is still very much optimistic and theoretical. And Republicans have to make good on that promise if they're going to see long-term wins. But in the short term, the midterms, it is still a toss-up. It's still anyone's game. And I think that's why people like Rush Limbaugh are tongue-lashing some voters, because they need to increase that passion and turn that optimism into action if Republicans want to maintain the House and Senate, which, you know, it's a 50-50 shot right now.
So, Gregory, what do you think?
Short term, the curse of team sport politics is that when one side wages war, you have no choice but to wage war back. And the Democrats are waging a pretty fierce war. So the Republicans, I think, have no choice. Long term, and this is, I don't know, this is an idea of mine. Long term, the Republicans are going to have an edge, because if the Democrats are saying there's no due process when you target your sons or your fathers, then the Republican Party becomes about justice for all, and the Democrats become a party of justice just for women. And so the thing is, what party is going to have an edge in the future? A party just for women or a party for men and women? And I think the Republicans could look at it that way, as like, we're the party for everyone, men and women. They're just the party for women. And I think people really would rather prefer unity over division long term.
That's what hurt Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
I mean, the gender-based identity politics are what hurt her, because she thought she was a sure thing. I think the Trump campaign thought she was a sure thing, and she let that slip through her fingers by creating what turned out to be a divisive campaign, because you cannot alienate half of your electorate.
No, but I think that the other side of this is women wanting to be heard. And
no, but we are listening. I mean, women are married to men. They have sons.
No,
and all the boys listen to their mothers and their sisters.
I'm a man. I understand.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying to you is that we have a history in this country of women being dismissed in terms of kind of sexual misbehavior by men and so forth. And you have an opportunity here, it seems to me,
you read the New York Post, women sexually misbehave as well.
I know, but I'm just telling you.
All men are not the devil.
And in this case, the whole
except for Jesse.
Going back to what Greg was talking about with the yearbook at Georgetown Prep, you know, it was making fools and mocking women.
No, it wasn't, Juan.
A little bit
the
of
source for that story was a left-wing activist Democrat.
No, it's a real thing.
It's a sad part.
Yes, it was.
The sad part of all of this is everybody thinks that the hashtag Me Too movement is the first time we talked about women's rights. There have been women in the trenches fighting for women's rights, fighting for rape victims and victims of domestic violence for 30, 40, 50 years. So don't make like this is just happening.
I don't think women have a history of being heard. Michael Moore's new anti-Trump film bombs at the box office. Guess what? Greg's on it. And that's next on The Five.
All right, Michael Moore is now making disaster movies. His new one, an 8th place flop, making only $3 million total. It sank faster than the SS Poseidon. Does this flop matter? Not to the media, who think American audiences don't see Moore's films because we're all rubes. Meanwhile, the coastal elites use Moore's screeds as a virtue signal. You lie and tell friends you saw it. The friends say the same thing, so the lie stands. Moore's films are like vitamin supplements. Most offer zero benefits, but you still say nice things about him. But to his credit, Moore's movies are overtly political. Unlike the rest of Hollywood's dreck, where producers inject politics as a way to get crummy stuff made, the script sucks, but on page 7, there's that part about climate change. At least Moore wears his politics on his sleeve. God knows there's plenty of room. Now, I'm sure the media expected the film to open big, a rejection of Trump and you. It didn't, and it wasn't. The lessons? Ideology as entertainment is as loony as a colonoscopy for recreation. Plus, America doesn't need a lecture from a rich dude about how bad things are, especially when things are good. We know a lie when we see it. Our country's metrics look great, which turns Moore's cinema into a fairy tale for wounded liberals. Yet, as usual, when Moore flops, the media ignores it. If the movie was #1, you can bet he'd be everywhere. There's that old saying about the media: you don't report on planes that don't crash, but you also don't report on your favorite beliefs that do. You know, Judge, we just want an escape. Who goes to movies for political, like, what? Would you go to see a political movie, right or left?
I'm dying to go to a movie. Any movie. I'm trying to get anyone to take me to the movie. Look, when I go to Michael Moore,
Juan, take her to the movies.
What? You want to take me to the movies?
We'll have to do something. Because
Why?
you know what?
Take her to the
Why?
movies.
I don't think
You
it's
and I couldn't agree on a movie.
Why not? We'll pick a movie.
No, I'll
Okay,
pick the
okay.
movie. You both go to it.
I'll pick a movie.
You pick
okay,
the movie.
Ben-Hur.
All right, Ben-Hur.
No, something
We
in
have to
this,
go
something
back
in this, something in this century. Judge.
This century?
This century.
All right,
I'm
Gone
with
with the
Ben-Hur.
Wind? No, that's before Ben-Hur.
Wait a minute.
You're going in the opposite direction, Judge.
Kennedy says she's with it.
Yeah, Kennedy, what do you want to see?
Oh, what do I want to see? Gosh, I love Marvel movies.
You know what's a good movie? You know what you'd love? The new Nicolas Cage one, Mandy.
Maniac.
No, it's called Mandy.
That's what I said.
Oh, it's fantastic.
No, but I heard his character is unreal. Like, he's really
yeah.
not a But it's so funny because we're talking about this. We're not talking about Michael Moore because it's not entertainment. It's not how people consume that kind of information. Everyone has giant Costco TVs now. Everyone has a 50-inch plasma TV or flat screen, whatever. And so now you're on Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime and soon Fox Nation, and you're able to watch this incredible content. And you go to movies for total escapism. That's when you go for stuff blowing up and popcorn.
I think you got a great point because, in fact, Michael Moore had some hit movies that were about news. But now I think news is so omnipresent. I think people are sick. I think people want. So the big movie in my family this weekend was The House with a Clock in the Walls, which is Jack Black and Kate
Was that
Blanchett.
good?
I didn't go, but everybody went except me because I work.
They like it?
They loved it, but the little guys got a little scared. But I'm telling you, that's where people went. They didn't go to Michael Moore. But I think it's because, boy, the news is kind of rough, right?
Well, you need escapism.
Here's the difference between Fahrenheit 9/11 and Fahrenheit 11/9. The first movie was based on a conspiracy theory, and audiences loves that. Remember the Saudi connection to the Bush family, Dick Cheney's war profiteers, the WMD scandal, the CIA. They loved that stuff, and it gave meaning to the anti-war left at the time, and the critics loved it because it was fresh. Now, if you want, there's no conspiracy with Donald Trump. It's all out in the open. There's nothing going on behind the scenes. If anything, people are conspiring against him. And if you want anti-Trump propaganda, you watch CNN or you watch MSNBC.
You know what's interesting, though, and Michael Moore was one of the few people who called the election ahead of time.
Right, that's
true. There were very, very few, so many people. All the pollsters were off, and he was the one person on the left who said, I know these people. I know these people in Michigan and in the Rust Belt, and they are so disenfranchised, and identity politics doesn't ring true with them. What he is saying resonates, and he could easily win at least this part of the country, and he was absolutely right. So he makes a better analyst than he does propaganda.
I think he said white identity politics was resonating because they thought somebody else was benefiting, not them. I think that's what it is. And Jesse, by the way,
yes.
I just to me, when you look at Michael Moore, it seems to me Michael Moore was hitting something that was very real before, and you could say, oh, no conspiracy this time? Tell that to the Russians.
What was the conspiracy?
Oh, that's what Robert Mueller and everybody.
How about all those?
It's collusion.
Is there really a dearth of
it's Russians
material?
It's Russians behind the flop. The Russians.
I think they're in the wall. They're in that movie.
Yes. All right. Shall we move on? Left-wing protesters chased Ted Cruz out of a restaurant. And that's just one example of liberal lunacy over Kavanaugh.
Excuse me. They know way harder than you do. We believe survivors. We believe survivors. God bless you. We believe survivors. God bless you. Excuse me. Let my wife through.
Late night comedian Jimmy Kimmel is under fire for making this crude joke.
I think there's a compromise here, and well, hear me out on this. So Kavanaugh gets confirmed to the Supreme Court. Okay. Well, in return, we get to cut that pesky penis of his off in front of everyone.
And Joy Behar is doubling down on her claim Kavanaugh is already guilty.
Allow it to push the vote forward, even though they heard about the second accusation.
Yeah, because they figure they'll push him in, he'll be in, they'll get their way, and then we'll find out the guy is guilty. What good is that? They're going to have to impeach a Supreme Court justice.
Okay, Juan, so your party has managed to make Ted Cruz look like a sympathetic figure. That's, that's not easy for some people. I'm just kidding. I love the senator. But in all seriousness, you guys don't want people to eat, chasing them out of restaurants.
Don't want people to eat.
Condemn, please. Condemn.
Well, I don't think it's appropriate.
Good. All right, Janine, what do you think about that?
Thank you. That's enough. That's enough. You know what else I want to add to that?
Go ahead.
We never did this to Sotomayor and Kagan, and the truth is Kagan was nowhere near qualified. We Republicans are just so polite. I'm confused.
Yeah, because he's not the nominee.
No, but it's for the support of Kavanaugh. That's what it's all about.
It's not Kagan or Sotomayor.
No, but what I'm saying is
Joe Biden
we didn't have 202 arrests because we didn't like Kagan. We didn't interrupt 451 times because we didn't like Sotomayor. We respect these candidates. The Democrats have no respect.
As I recall, in 2010, when the health care thing was happening, there were some pretty disrespectful people.
Really? Peaceful Tea Party protests. No Tea Party member ever chased anybody out of a restaurant. Greg, what do you make of this really aggressive behavior?
All right, two things. The reason right-wingers don't do this, left-wingers do, because they ascribe a moral judgment on your politics. You're not just wrong, you're evil. Therefore, that excuses any kind of action towards you. It's okay to go after and humiliate somebody in public because they are evil, not wrong. We are getting dangerously close to mob rule, all right? Here's the evidence. We have a media that's excusing violence by Antifa, saying that they're a nonviolent peace group. The media is excusing allegations without due process. That's mob. Media excusing hindrances of free speech on campus. When you put all that stuff together, you are losing control of a country. We are talking about mob rule, and it does. People think, revolution doesn't happen like that. It happens over time. I don't know at this rate where we're going to be in 20 years.
Yeah, because I think we're divided. But Greg, let me just come back at you. It wasn't the left wing that went into Planet Ping Pong Pizza with a gun.
Yeah, but Antifa is a group that beat people up with bike locks.
Oh yeah, and who ran people over in Charlottesville?
The right has nuts. You guys have movements.
Oh, I see.
Okay, Juan,
and then when they run and kill
someone,
I
would say literally
also
movements.
Shot by a
well, I'm just saying it's not one side or the other. Greg is making it out like it's just the.
It is. We're about rule of law. You're about chaos.
Can I just make a point here?
Well,
here's the thing, because now it's interesting because the Democrats' line is we don't need due process. This is the Senate, and they want to turn the Senate into a circus. They want to do away with Robert's Rules of Order and any parliamentary procedure because it's inconvenient for them. And what that means is leftists now, emotional leftists, because for me, it's not about party. It's about emotionalism versus rationalism. And, very few rationalists make cases like this because they actually try and let their facts and claims speak for them. But when that fails, and that is the case in the Kavanaugh hearings, then that's when you resort to this kind of emotionalism. And it's not acceptable because it is an abdication of personal responsibility because people no longer feel that they have to comport themselves like rational human beings.
I hope not. But what we saw, and I thought that Martha McCallum did an excellent job of interviewing Kavanaugh last night. And really, I think, put a finger in the eye of all Fox critics who said, oh, no, she's not going to be a straight interview. She did a good job. But you see him, as his defense, it was emotional, to your point. I was a virgin, therefore I couldn't have done it. Well, that's not relevant, and it didn't fit. You can still attack somebody.
Okay, but
that was the appeal.
What would an acceptable defense sound like? What would an acceptable defense? What could Brett Kavanaugh say to you that would make you think that he was not guilty?
Done it, right? When he says he didn't do it, therefore, he would say, well, so what party is it that you say you didn't attend? He doesn't even know that.
Everything he said has been almost airtight. From
please.
Every defense from the witnesses, they've all sided with him.
Where's
His
Mark Judge?
denial under penalty of perjury as well. Exculpatory calendars he's going to proffer.
Should she be under penalty of perjury for making the claim?
You can't test.
Every complainant who brought a case in my office under penalty of perjury, you make the claim, you don't follow through with it, I can file against you. Should that happen?
That's a criminal action.
Juan, we just want to eat in peace and not chase out of a restaurant. It's a big day for Juan, though. His new book's on sale today, and we're going to preview it up next.
We decided to... What do you have to lose? At least someone's here to answer that. That was one of the more memorable lines from then candidate Trump on the campaign trail, and it has sparked a nationwide debate about race and politics in America. Those comments have also inspired our friend and fellow fighter Juan Williams' newest book titled "What the Hell Do You Have to Lose? Trump's War on Civil Rights." It hits bookstores today. Go buy it immediately because Juan Williams, even if you disagree with him, is a great writer. So, Juan, was it your obsession with the president that caused you to research and write a book all about him?
I was so
parse many campaign trail
I was taken by this, by these words. What the hell do you have to lose? Because the suggestion was, you know, these black folks, they live in communities with lots of gun violence. They have no jobs, and they have no future, and they've been voting for Democrats. So it was a lose. So what the hell do you have to lose? Why not come vote for me? That's the way I understood it. But then I thought, wait a second. He's not speaking in a black community, and he's not speaking to black. He's talking to whites about black people in this way, in much the way that he talked about the Mexicans and the immigrants, rapists, criminals, all that. But in this case, he's saying to whites that he, Donald Trump, is the hero who will protect them against the chaos, the dysfunction that threatens them. I thought two things, Kennedy. One, most black people don't live like that. I think 22% of black America lives in poverty, but I think it's 40% of black America makes between like 35 and 100,000, other 12% between 100 and 200. So a majority, more than 50%.
Who's failing then in that perception?
Can I respond to this? Because I think this is interesting. I do think he was talking to you. I do think Donald Trump was using the television to get to an audience that the media wasn't going to give him. So when he went and said, what do you have to lose? He was talking to African Americans. And the pitch, it was a sales pitch. He's a salesman. The sales pitch is exactly the same that Thomas Sowell, Walter Williams, Shelby Steele have echoed in the past, which is if you don't offer a competitive product to the Democratic Party doesn't have to try. So all that Trump is saying and all the black intellectuals have been saying is once the Republicans offer a competitive product, finally the Democrats will stop taking blacks for granted.
Well, that's a logical argument, Greg. But the point is that he wasn't arguing for programs that, in fact, would bolster the black middle class or even help the black
Look at prison
poor.
reform. He's open. He's very open.
Oh, no. In terms of prison reform, look at what the Justice Department in the Trump administration has done. They pushed back against Republicans who want that.
Because Jeff Sessions there are people within the president's circle. Jeff Sessions is awful when it comes to criminal justice reform, but there are people like Jared Kushner.
Inside the White House, Jared Kushner is pushing prison reform.
Yeah, but it ain't happening.
But it is going to happen. Okay. They passed part of the bill, what they want. And by the way, what the hell do you have to lose? Can't we even look at unemployment, African-American unemployment? In the end, didn't it work?
No, because this is exactly Trump's retort. Whenever anybody asks about race, he says, look at the unemployment rate.
But it's one of the metrics
But the thing is, two things I would say to this, Judge. Most of that reduction was under President Obama. And the second thing is black unemployment remains double white unemployment. And then you get into the details, which I do in the book, about programs that are intended to bolster black economics in this country, either in terms of work or investment, and you see that the Trump administration is
can I ask you this, Juan? So after many years of the Democrats putting in place these economic programs to help blacks, why is black unemployment and all those metrics double what it is for whites. Does that tell you then maybe these programs that the Democrats are putting forward maybe not be working?
Well, in some cases, they may not work. In some places,
so what's wrong with Donald Trump saying, let's put new programs forward, like on trade,
you're for choice.
Technology?
Choice.
We're talking about a dependency on government programs, though.
One is, if he had new programs, I'd be anxious to see them.
I think he has economic
policies.
Well, I don't see it.
Programs.
But and the second thing to say is, in just the way that you cast that or framed it, you fail to see that, in fact, there's been tremendous, I think the biggest accomplishment from the civil rights movement has been the increase in the black middle class and black political power that produced the first black president. To ignore the fact that there has been progress, it seems to me, is condescending and insulting to therefore say, what the hell do you people have to lose?
But Juan, you know, and obviously, you know, the racial history in this country is checkered with so much tragedy and sadness, and there's been so much division, and it seems like there are a lot of people who are willing to give into that division. I would like to see someone, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the president, because I don't believe that politicians are messianic. I don't believe that government programs help people. I believe that individuals help themselves.
Right.
And I would love to see someone come forward who really can truly bring people together. And
well,
are you talking about me?
Well, that was supposed to be Barack Obama.
Well, I think that to a certain extent he did, but it became polarizing.
And now it's Kanye West. He's the only one that gets us together.
I mean, at least he's having an interesting conversation, and he's bold enough to do that. Yeah. And he's willing to say, don't bully me into your politics. I don't want to believe what you believe just because you tell me to believe it. I have a great deal of respect for that.
So I have a great deal of respect and appreciation for you guys for having the conversation, because I think this is an important conversation that people oftentimes steer away from.
Yep.
And so I just appreciate the fact that you guys would have it and talk about it, because that's what the book's intended to do. Get people talking.
You going on a book tour?
I'm going to go on a book tour. Wait a second. You wanted to go to a movie, but I got to go on a book tour.
My boyfriend's
wait till I get back.
Juan, take her to a movie. What the hell do you have to lose?
Oh, there's a book tour.
I'm going on a book tour. So tomorrow I'm going to be in Atlanta, and then San Francisco, Seattle, and then Washington on Sunday.
Yeah.
Back here.
Oh, fantastic.
All right, very good. One more thing is up next. Stay right here. What do you have to lose? At least someone's here to answer that. That was one of the more memorable lines from then candidate Trump on the campaign trail, and it has sparked a nationwide debate about race and politics in America. Those comments have also inspired our friend and fellow fighter Juan Williams' newest book titled What the Hell Do You Have to Lose? Trump's War on Civil Rights. It hits bookstores today. Go buy it immediately, because Juan Williams, even if you disagree with him, is a great writer. So, Juan, was it your obsession with the president that caused you to research and write a book all about him?
No, I was so
parse many campaign trail speeches?
I was taken by this, by these words. What the hell do you have to lose? Because the suggestion was, you know, these black folks, they live in communities with lots of gun violence. They have no jobs, and they have no future, and they've been voting for Democrats. So it was a lose. So what the hell do you have to lose? Why not come vote for me? That's the way I understood it. But then I thought, wait a second. He's not speaking in a black community, and he's not speaking to black. He's talking to whites about black people in this way, in much the way that he talked about the Mexicans and the immigrants, rapists, criminals, all that. But in this case, he's saying to whites that he, Donald Trump, is the hero who will protect them against the chaos, the dysfunction that threatens them. I thought two things, Kennedy. One, most black people don't live like that. I think 22% of black America lives in poverty, but I think it's 40% of black America makes between like 35 and 100,000, other 12% between 100 and 200. So a majority, more than 50%.
Who's failing then in that perception?
Can I respond to this? Because I think this is interesting. I do think he was talking to you. I do think Donald Trump was using the television to get to an audience that the media wasn't going to give him. So when he went and said, what do you have to lose? He was talking to African Americans. And the pitch, it was a sales pitch. He's a salesman. The sales pitch is exactly the same that Thomas Sowell, Walter Williams, Shelby Steele have echoed in the past, which is if you don't offer a competitive product to the Democratic Party doesn't have to try. So all that Trump is saying and all the black intellectuals have been saying is once the Republicans offer a competitive product, finally the Democrats will stop taking blacks for granted.
Well, that's a logical argument, Greg. But the point is that he wasn't arguing for programs that in fact would bolster
don't you
the
think
black
he'd be open?
middle class or even help the black
Look at prison
poor.
reform. He's open. He's
No.
very open.
Oh, no. In
He's
terms
not-
of prison reform, look at what the Justice Department in the Trump administration has done. They pushed back against
I'm going to
Republicans
push back against
who
that
want that.
because
Go ahead.
Jeff
you're
Sessions
wrong about
and
that.
there are people within
Jeff
the president's circle.
Sessions.
Jeff Sessions is awful when it comes to criminal justice reform, but there are people like Jared
It's inside
Kushner.
the White House. Jared Kushner is pushing prison reform.
Yeah, but
And
it ain't happening.
But it is going to happen.
Okay.
They passed part of the bill, what they want. And by the way, what the hell do you have to lose? Can't we even look at unemployment, African-American unemployment? In the end, didn't it work?
No, because this is exactly Trump's retort. Whenever anybody asks about race, he says, look at the unemployment
it's
rate.
one of the metrics
But the
to
thing
look
is,
at.
two things I would say to this judge. Most of that reduction was under President Obama. And the second thing is black unemployment remains double white unemployment. And then you get into the details, which I do in the book, about programs that are intended to bolster black economics in this country, either in terms of work or investment, and you see that the Trump administration is
Can I
pulling
ask you
back.
this, Juan? So after many years of the Democrats putting in place these economic programs to help blacks, why is black unemployment and all those metrics double what it is for whites? Does that tell you then maybe these programs that the Democrats are putting forward maybe not be working?
Well, in some cases, they may not work. In some places, they
So
may...
what's wrong with Donald Trump
But
saying
here's-
let's put new programs forward, like on trade,
You're for
or
choice.
technology?
School choice.
We're
It might
talking about
benefit
a
black
dependency on
things in
government
response.
programs.